Hi guys, I had to start a second video because that particular recording system only allowed me to video record for 10 minutes, so I have to continue on to the second page for you. So we went over positive and negative numbers and went over from least to greatest. Remember, sometimes they'll have you do it from greatest to least. The next thing that you'll have to remember from a couple years ago or even last year are additive inverses. This is the number that when you add it together, it's its opposite. So you can put opposite here. And a number and its opposite or the additive inverse will always add up to 0 or have no change. Okay, so let's go over those examples right underneath it. When I add negative 7.5 to something else, it's going to be 0. So this is an additive inverse. So the opposite of negative 7.5 is positive 7.5. So its additive inverse is positive 7.5 to equal 0. If you look at number 2, I have 12 plus something equals 0. So 12 plus negative 12 is going to equal 0. And then number 3, it looks like I'm adding two opposites together. So that's an additive inverse, which always adds up to equal 0. And then it says, what is the additive inverse of negative 45? Well, that would be positive 45. Okay. And then I'm going to scroll down here. It looks like we've only got a little bit left. It says find the additive inverse for each pair of numbers below and then place and label them on the number line below. Okay, so it looks like for A, its number is negative 2. So that means B is going to be a positive 2 for its additive inverse. For C, it's 4.5, so its additive inverse is negative 4.5. And then I'm going to go ahead and place these on the number line. So A is at negative 2, and then B is at positive 2. And if you notice, look how far away they are from 0. They're the same distance on opposite sides, which is why they're called additive inverses, and they add up to equal 0. So if I do C, C is positive 4.5, so I'm going to put C here, and D is at negative 4.5. So they are both the same distance away from 0. Okay, then the last section is just on absolute value, which you guys also have learned in the past before. Absolute value is the distance away from 0. Since we're talking about distance, that's why we will always see the absolute value signs, which are those two bars on the side of the number, and it will always be positive. When we talk about distance, we never talk about a negative value. So for example, the distance from Cincinnati to Florida is positive set of miles. And then if I go back from Florida back to Cincinnati, it's still a positive set of miles that I have to drive. You never hear anybody is going negative. When you're driving a car, the mileage doesn't start going backwards if you're going back home. Okay. Distance is always going to be a positive value, which is why we always have those absolute value signs next to it when we're talking about distance. So number 1's example is the absolute value of negative 5. Well, how far away is negative 5 from 0? Well, it's 5 spots away from 0. What's the absolute value of 3.5? Well, how far away is 3.5 from 0? It's 3.5 spots away from 0. Okay, 1.5 is 1.5 spots away from 0. It's the distance away from 0. And negative 8 1/4 is 8 1/4 away from 0. That's how many spots or the distance away it is from 0 on the number line. So the next example, it says place and label the following numbers on the number line below. So when I'm looking at these, it looks like I have to go all the way from negative 6, and then I'll just keep going this way to help me label 3, 4. And then A doesn't have the absolute value sign, so it is just a value of negative 6. So that means that A is going to go right here. Okay, B is the absolute value of negative 3, so it wants to know how far away negative 3 is from 0, which is 3. So when I label this, I'm going to put it on the value of 3 because I know it's that far away from 0. Same thing with C. It says the absolute value of negative 1.5, which is 1.5. So I'm going to put C right here. And then D is 2 because it's 2 spots away from 0, so I would label it like that. Okay, so you guys have just finished your notes. You're going to do a couple of different stations today to practice, and then you'll have your first page of homework to do.